This is a Music Therapy Chronicles podcast episode with Melanie Wiseheart.
People's level of familiarity with the term reflective practice. And that was like a little bit lower. Like people said they were like somewhat familiar. I mean, there was people all over, but there was like the options were very familiar, somewhat familiar, somewhere in the middle, I think, like unfamiliar, somewhat unfamiliar, whatever. And a lot of people said that they were either somewhat familiar. Actually, that was the leading response. They were like somewhat familiar with the term or like somewhat unfamiliar. But almost 80% of people said that they responded that they engage in reflective practice regularly. So more people are engaging in it after I gave the definition. Like I gave the definition and then asked, do you do it? So we're doing it. We're just not calling it that.
You're listening to the Music Therapy Chronicles, a podcast about music therapy from a variety of perspectives. Our ambition is to inspire and connect listeners through meaningful conversations, just like a music therapy conference you can listen to anywhere. My name is Trisha Coyote. I'm your weekly host and a board-certified music therapist from the New England region. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe so you never miss an episode and consider leaving us a rating and review. We really appreciate them. You can find more podcast episodes, links to our pod courses, the self-care community, links to all of our social media, and get on our monthly newsletter, all at musictherapychronicles.com. Thank you so much for choosing to listen to this show today, and you can always reach me by sending an email to hello@musictherapychronicles.com. Welcome back to the Music Therapy Chronicles. Today is day two, part 2 of my conversation with Melanie Wiseheart. And today is the part of our conversation where we talked about a lot of the really positive parts and benefits of reflective practice, of engaging in reflective practice. And we also touched on why it's important to know how, if, when, why we are engaging in reflective practice, because it enhances our awareness to know when other people aren't. And I briefly shared about a personal experience I've had with a colleague who left a position they loved. And, I can't speak to them, but from what I saw, a lot of it was because the team that this colleague was serving on was not engaging in reflective practice. And so he was always at odds with what was going on and trying to support the students and the staff, and not seeing eye to eye on like what changes need to be made or what areas of growth there needed to be. And so by knowing, like, if I was in a position like that, hey, are my team members not aware that reflective practice is a thing, and like, should I be bringing this to them and saying, hey, how can we do this together? Or are they aware and just not willing to go there right now, whether that be just blatantly not willing to do it or not having the time or energy? And is this a way that I can support them so we can work as a team, or is this like the end of the road here where we're just not seeing eye to eye and that's not going to change, and one of us needs to make a decision that's best, and that could be leaving. So anyway, kind of a heavy topic for the lighter of these 2 episodes, but for me was definitely an eye-opener of how to look at situations like that. So I hope you enjoy part 2 of my conversation with Melanie. If you missed part 1, please go check it out. It was last week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the show so you don't miss any episodes, and I'll see you on the other end of this one. So tell us some of, we'll flip it. Some of the, I
Yeah.
don't want to say like positive outcomes of your research, but maybe
Yeah.
something that surprised
Benefits.
you, benefits. Yeah. Yeah. Go for
Yeah.
it.
The cool stuff. It was, oh gosh, there's so much good stuff. What do I start with? Perceived benefits. I made a word cloud of all so I had the open-ended questions where like, what are the benefits? What are the drawbacks? What are the barriers? And then like just additional thoughts. I just opened it up for anybody to say anything that they hadn't got to say yet in the survey. And it was the benefits. I made a word cloud for each of those just to see like what, it was a different way of looking at the data, you know? And in this word cloud, I wish our listeners could see it right now, but I will describe it to you. It's a bunch of words, obviously, because that's what a word cloud is. It's a bunch of words. Front and center, bold and big, it says client. And the next two biggest ones and boldest ones are better, help, improve, and process. And I just love that the client is front and center in all that we do. And that just makes me really fulfilled as a therapist, as a researcher, and like a part of this community. That is our focus. And that was just so clearly demonstrated in their comments. So that was just pulled out of, that the words, the computer just pulled out those words, and client showed up more often than any other word in the benefits. And so that was, I pulled out 6 themes with the perceived benefits, and there were sub themes to each of them. But the biggest overall theme was increased understanding of the music therapy process and therapeutic moments with clients. So everything was like just all about the client and our time together. Meaning making came up a lot in that, like a sub theme of that. The relationship with the client's needs, the client's benefits, how the client benefits when we engage in reflective practice, clarity in processing events from the session, and the broadening perspectives and shifting our lens in the therapy session. That was really cool stuff. Like I could take each one of these and just do like a whole like talk on just one. Like there's so much here. The second theme was personal self-care for the therapist. Yay, we need it. And in that were a lot of different things that I just kind of grouped together, like improved well-being and health and quality of life for the therapist, stress reduction, prevention and reduction of burnout, grounding and calming, regulation. Somebody said reset. Really like that. Reset. Empowerment, autonomy, agency in the workplace. I love how like all of these words came about. Motivation, boundary setting, musical and creative space for the self. I love that. Cathartic release, and establishing a therapeutic environment, just maintaining the therapeutic environment itself. Really cool stuff. And then we had another theme, professional growth and development. It was like learning and gaining new insights and skill development, the nuts and bolts, I think, more of that side, but also just so many people, like this came up over and over again. So many people just said, it makes me a better therapist. I love that. It just makes me a better therapist.
Yes.
Love it. Enhanced quality of care. Like it enhances, the quality of care that I give. Development of clinical intuition, empathy, compassion, presence, and intentionality. I loved all of those things came up. The next theme was enhanced self-awareness, which is kind of bleed into each other. Spaghetti, not waffles, right? Recognizing and honoring our own emotions, emotional processing, acknowledging and addressing bias came up a lot in that one, and working with countertransference. And then effective treatment planning was the fifth theme. And it was like planning for future sessions, improving patient-client outcomes, problem solving, and generating new ideas and getting inspired. Like somebody said, inspiration. And then the last one was peer support, feeling supported by trusted colleagues, value of collective knowledge and supervision, and prevention of isolation. So those were like all the perceived benefits of it. And it was really neat to just to see that word cloud of client front and center. And so many people just saying it makes me a better therapist.
Yeah. Up to you if you're comfortable like
Uh-huh.
sharing that visual. We can put it in the show notes if you want.
Oh,
No pressure.
absolutely. Yes,
But I think
I'll share every word cloud I made. I
cool. That
made
could
one
be
for
really cool for
each.
people.
Yeah, I made one for each of the open-ended questions. I can share the themes too. I put them in a little handy chart. So,
Yeah. I love that.
yay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
There are so many of those. And like you said, spaghetti, not waffles for sure.
Yeah.
Let me get my thought into words. So many of those are things that make us as helping professionals very unique. I think,
Mm-hmm.
not everyone, this isn't the work for everyone, and that's okay. Where many of us are not made to do other jobs where we would not thrive in. And so I
Right.
think that it's beautiful how you were able to highlight some of the strengths we have as a community, as a profession, and say, like, these are things that are important for us to do. We're already good at them, and
Mm,
they are enhancing what we're able to do clinically. And just, finding ways to make the reflective process more accessible. And one of the things that keeps coming up to mind as we've gone through this conversation is, if someone has not had a supervisor like you had, who was able to probe in the right way and ask the right questions and to shift your perspective about recording versus reflection, they might
mm,
not even have been like aware of this, or like, are they doing it or are they not doing it, and how it can expand their practice. Just like you said, you were finally able to see, like, oh, I'm burnt out because like I'm not able to work authentically, and
mm-hmm.
someone else in this position would really thrive, but I'm not. And it's not because I'm wrong or anyone else is wrong, or music therapy isn't right for me, or like any of these other things that we could tell ourselves, but it's
Yeah.
because someone asked the right questions for you to get the right answers from
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. It starts with asking questions, to
Mm.
each other, to ourselves. Um, yeah. Yes. Well, and something that was interesting that came about that I actually expected, or I predicted would, I didn't expect, but I predicted would come about, did in the research. When I've presented, before I did my research, I presented this at like just the idea of reflective practice and how to implement it into your clinical practice at three, I think, different conferences.
Mm.
And the anecdotal evidence, and this goes in kind of my review of literature, like we don't have a lot, but I have anecdotal evidence from conferences where
Yeah.
people were like, oh, what is reflective practice? And I would explain it or like describe it. And they're like, oh, yeah, I do that. I didn't know
Mm.
that I did that. It's cool to have a word to put to it, and a definition, of like awareness of like what I'm doing while I'm doing it. And a lot of people, and that was that exact. So I predicted that that would come about, and so I asked, in the kind of quantitative portion of the survey, I asked, people's level of familiarity with the term reflective practice. And that
Mm.
was like a little bit lower. Like people said they were like somewhat familiar. I mean, there was people all over, the, but there was like the options were very familiar, somewhat familiar, somewhere in the middle, I think, like unfamiliar, somewhat unfamiliar, whatever. And a lot of people said that they were either somewhat familiar. Actually, that was the leading response. They were like somewhat familiar with the term, or like somewhat unfamiliar. But
Mm.
almost 80% of people said that they responded that they engage in reflective practice regularly. So more people are engaging in it after I gave them the definition. Like I gave them the
Mm.
definition and then asked, what, do you do it? So we're doing it. We're just not calling it that, which goes back to the terminology thing, that there's just different terms for things, and we might not call it, give it a name, but it's just like, and some people put that in the comments too. They're like, that's just how I practice, like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
just what I do. It's just an integral to my clinical practice is doing this. And I'm like, that's awesome. That's what we want. Like that's best practice right there. And the same thing happened. A really interesting takeaway was education. People said far and away, I think 90 something percent of people, I wish I had the exact numbers in front of me. I don't, and I could look them up right here, but I don't want to take time to do that. It was like 90 something percent of participants said that reflective practice was valuable in their clinical practice.
Mm.
And 70 something, high 70s something percent said that they believe it should be taught in music therapy clinical education, or clinical music therapy education and clinical training.
Yeah.
And only about 50% said that it was a part of their education and clinical training. So we have a field full of music therapists that see the value, are practicing it regularly, say it should be a part of education, and only half of us are learning it.
Yeah.
Oh, like that's got implications for our educators. So educators, listen up. Come talk to me and we'll collaborate.
Yeah.
And make this happen. And well, and there's a giant asterisk there, because a lot of comments did say, I learned the concepts of what you're talking about here in my education. We just didn't call it that. So there is that nuance as well. So I don't want to say like only half of us are learning it. More might be learning it and just not calling it that or giving it a term. So I don't want to I'm not trying to insult our education systems or anything. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting takeaway though, for sure.
I think also this is going to get kind of meta, but having the awareness that we are being reflective as opposed to a different type of recording or objective or whatever, having the awareness that we're able to have this reflective lens versus a different lens is important for, ourselves. So we then know how to apply the information we're reflecting on. It's important for when we are teaching others, supervising others, educating others. Again, I'm trying to think of it as a lens. When we have and use this reflective lens, it's important to know that that's what we're doing in order to apply it fully. Yes, it should just be part of our practice and it should just kind of be built in and it's spaghetti. But also, knowing by knowing some people are doing it and doing it with intention, we can then say, okay, but not everyone is doing it. And how do we help them apply this? I think
Absolutely.
that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and something very interesting came about in the drawbacks. Where did that go? I'm looking at my notes here. Perceived barriers. Here we go. Drawbacks. Some respondents responded with social considerations, and excuse me, the comments were that relationships with colleagues can suffer when I practice reflectively and they do not. And one person said, two people actually said they have feelings of frustration with other music therapists who do not practice reflectively. And one person said that engagement in reflective practice can make you unpopular among music therapists. And I was like, yeah. So but it is not everybody has the same opinion about it. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great life example of what I'm saying, because hey, that other person might know reflective as practice is a thing, but be choosing not to do it, or they might just not know. And so by being able to say, this person and I are clashing. Why are we clashing? Oh, it's because I'm using this reflective lens and they aren't. Okay, then can I try and show it to them? Or is it they're just rejecting it? This is a whole other self-awareness on top of it to then help us reflect even more. It's like I said, it's getting very meta. We're a layered cake. We're no longer spaghetti. We're like spaghetti cake lasagna.
I love it. I love food. Anytime we can work in food, I'm all about it.
Got you. Got you.
Yeah, and that was very interesting to me. And I was like, oh, okay. So, and people just talked about like workplace issues in general, being drawbacks. Like reflective practice is not valued or supported in my workplace, by my supervisor or colleagues. Like that's not my work culture.
Yeah.
Lack of physical space. Like I don't have anywhere to do it. I mean, a lot of people actually said I do it in my car between sessions, like in home-based care or on the way to or from the office to like decompress and close out the day and or whatever, or start the day, whichever. But the time and people said like they feel isolated in the workplace, and they just, it's a drawback because they don't have anybody to do it with, and they lack just that peer support, I guess. Which apparently I'm here to just talk about your peer support episode that you had.
They'll love that. I will let them know.
It, you guys.
Yes, definitely. If you haven't checked out that episode, check it out. If you haven't checked out the peer support network, check them out.
Yeah.
But I actually, now that we're in this particular topic, I'm thinking of a school I work at, and it's a wonderful place. I love being there. And recently, one of the staff members who I really meshed well with left.
Oh.
And it was because the team he was serving on, the long and short, now I could put words to it. The team he was serving on was not doing reflective practice, and he was. And he was like, I can't work in this environment. Like, I can't be trying to fix my things and fix all their things because they're not willing to reflect and improve. And that's really too bad that was the reason he had to leave. But yeah, I'm just, thank you for giving me like concise words to put to that.
Yeah, I'm reflecting back now, of course, layers.
Here we go.
Real time reflection. In that job where I was experiencing a lot of burnout, I was constantly, I'm a writer. I like to write. Even when I report, I like to write a very like detailed of like all the richness that happened in the session. Like this was a really cool hour and these were all the reasons, and I was constantly getting feedback that my reports were too long and I just needed to put it in a graph. Like just put it in a chart, put it in a chart, put it in a chart. Like if it can't go in a chart, like why are you even writing about it? And I'm like, because what is happening can't be put in a chart.
Yeah, it's not quantitative.
It's not quantitative because there's beauty and I just wanted to like shake somebody, and that it was just so frustrating. And I tried to, and I would look back at my reports. I'm like, okay, it's too long. I need to take it out. I need to take it out. I need to take it out. Brevity is nice and being concise is not one of my strengths. So I was like trying to like, I don't know, I was trying to reconcile in my brain, like, and trying to improve myself. Like, okay, it's too long. It's too wordy. It's get to the point, get to the point, get to the point. And there's skill in that for sure. But man, at the same time, I felt like I was cheating my client because I needed to document what happened and what they did. So I just started documenting separately and giving them what they wanted to see. I'll give you your stupid chart.
Here's the data, take it and leave.
Exactly. I'm like, well, this is, I don't want to say meaningless. It's not meaningless. It's not meaningless. Let the record reflect.
It's a limited perspective of what it was happening.
It doesn't tell the whole story of what is happening in therapeutic context with this person who has skills and abilities and desires and creativity and goodness in them, and they cannot be minimized and diminished to a chart just because it fits on your paper and you like to see it. Like, there's ethical implications there too. Like, just like power dynamics in healthcare. Man, that's another episode.
Totally. Another systemic problem.
Yes. So many things.
Yeah. Gosh.
I'm trying to think of anything else from the study
I was going to say,
that,
is there anything do you want to touch on before we do the rapid fire?
I guess additional thoughts people offered in the like just open-ended, tell me more, anything else that you said. A lot of people said that this was missing from my educational experience. And like, I now see how valuable it is in my career, like now that I'm there. Trying to see benefits. They listed a whole lot more benefits of self-care and connecting with your own music and personal growth and wellness. And a few people actually said this should be standard in practice and education. I was like, yeah. And people just said it's essential to best practice. And a lot of people added there that they do engage in it, but didn't have the terminology to label it as such. And a lot of people just expressed desire to learn more and implement it. And that was really encouraging. So, and also I thought some really great, nuances, like considerations came up, and like people talked about privileged access to resources for reflective practice, such as time and networks and media. One of the questions, I really didn't get into the results of this, but one of the questions was how and when and how often do you engage in reflective practice, and like with what media? So I had a whole bunch of options and people just like clicked whatever they want. And I had other. So a ton of different things came up: music and art and journaling and theater and dance and like movement, yoga, meditation, like all kinds of, just, it was across the gamut. It was really cool to see all the different ways, sculpting, really neat stuff. But somebody, a few people made the recognition, the important recognition that there's privilege wrapped into all of these things. And if you have access to the resources for either external or internal resources for reflective practice, and there are systemic issues in healthcare that do not support reflective practice in the Western medical model, because we value productivity over pausing,
100%.
Yeah. So that's in a nutshell what my research was about.
Yeah. Well, I will link it, and any visuals we have to share in the show notes, but I will make sure, people who are finding this episode can get to it and get, even more of what you've put together. And also, in a minute, I'll ask you about ways they can connect with you so that they can be ready when your book comes out. No pressure or rush, but just so, people will be ready.
Yeah.
They'll be wanting to read that.
Yeah.
So
I'm currently trying to decide whether I want to break this up into like 3 or so manuscripts for publication, like in journals, or if I want to keep it as a whole thing and make it a book chapter in the book. So that's my constant struggle, is like what to do with the product, that I have, and with the data, and where it needs to go. So I don't know, that journey will continue to unfold for me. So
yeah,
but I'll probably see you at a conference. So yeah.
Yeah. Totally. This podcast is sponsored by the Music Therapy Podcast Collective, also known as MTPC, where you can find a variety of CMTE opportunities in the form of pod courses. All of MTPC's pod courses are built on a listen, learn, apply model, where you start by listening to some assigned podcast episodes, then move into learning with the assistance of a workbook filled with resources for you to start your self-study towards whatever topics are most interesting, inspiring, and applicable to your practice. And then we finish with the apply section, which includes an office hour and a worksheet to determine how you are going to apply your learning to your personal life or professional practice. You can find all the Music Therapy Chronicles pod courses on our website, musictherapychronicles.com, and you can find the entire catalog of pod courses at MTPC's website, mtpodcastcollective.com. Make sure you also get on the MTPC newsletter for 10% off your first pod course purchase. Cool. Are you ready for the rapid fire?
Yes.
Okay. The first one is coffee or tea?
Oh, I love both. Coffee. Right now, since I'm currently drinking coffee.
Well, you had a very long car ride this morning, so I can't imagine what time you had to get up.
I did. Yeah. Well, yeah. My sleeping schedule is weird right now.
I hope that minimize is the word that came to mind. I hope that settles down for you soon.
Yeah.
Early bird or night owl?
Oh, this actually goes along with my sleep schedule weirdness right now. By nature, I am a night owl. I love my best work is done between the hours of 10 p.m. and 1 or 2 a.m. I love it. That's when I get my best ideas. I write really well in those hours. But I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old right now, and a full-time job that happens to be during the day. So our schedule demands right now that I not be a night owl. And so we have to leave the house at 6:30 a.m. every morning to get the girls to daycare before I get to, school and my partner gets to his job. And so it's like, well, when you have to leave the house at 6:30, that means you have to get up at 4:30. And that means you need to be in bed the night before around if the kids are in bed by 7:30 to 8 and we're in bed shortly after. And so my schedule dictates right now that I be a morning person, but naturally, and I want to get back to the stage of life sometime where I can be a night owl again, because that's where I do my best creative work.
Something you'd tell your younger self?
Oh, so many things.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself. It's okay to take care of yourself. It's okay. It's okay to take care of yourself. And I would repeat it over and over and over.
Yeah. Good one. Your music therapy elevator speech?
Oh, goodness. It depends on who I'm talking to. If I'm talking to a doctor at the hospital that I run into, I'm going to cite some research. I'm going to talk in very clinical terms about what we do and how we do it and how we meet the goals. And they're very individualized and it's evidence-based. And I'll always give examples. Always. I'll usually just give the freshest one that magic that's happened, in my session. If I can say something about one of the patients that we share, that's even better. If they know them. If it's a mom of a kid that I work with, I'll, or a potential client, I guess I should say, like a mom of somebody, I'll maybe not so much cite a bunch of research, but I'll just give examples and talk about whatever is closest to their experience. I will use that. And usually I'll say, I'll ask them a question and kind of make it a conversation. Well, have you, a lot of people value music for, motivation and processing and stuff. Everybody has, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people have that song that really hits them. And they're usually yeah, it's blah, blah, blah for me. I'm yeah, exactly. So we'll do that and we'll take that and we'll work in the, therapy. And I just kind of gear it towards whatever their experience is. When I worked in acute mental health for a while, and that's just my love. I love that setting. And so every day I would have to start my groups with, who I am. Hi, I'm Melanie. I'm a music therapist. And what we do in music therapy looks a little different depending on the day. Sometimes we sing, sometimes we play, sometimes we talk about music. And music is just a really important part of our lives. And we engage in music in all kinds of different ways here in the group to just meet our needs. So I'm interested in seeing where you all are today and what you need from the music. And let's just start with blah, blah, blah. Like improvisation is usually like the way I go to kind of do a check-in and see how everybody's doing and what they need from the music. Asking that question of what they need from the music is like, I find it's not a question that a lot of people have thought of before.
Yeah.
So it sets the tone and intentionality for the group. I find I don't do that every single time, but if the moment feels right, I do that. So anyway, yeah, lots of different ways to describe music therapy, I guess, depending on who I'm talking to and the context.
100%. Your favorite self-care practice?
I really love going to church.
Yeah.
Participating in worship is a very important thing to me, and connecting with my spirituality, in particularly in the group setting. I'm very empowered by that. It is very meaningful for me.
Yeah.
And being with my kids, my family in general, like my husband and my kids, I love it.
Good for you. Something that's currently adding value to your life?
This is adding value to my life. This research has been very important to me, and I've been working on this research. I started working on this research in 2018.
Wow.
I say I spent 7 years in grad school. I finished all of my coursework in 2018 and started on this research. And I also had like 3 moves and 2 babies and a world pandemic and job changes and everything in between there. So like I've been doing a few things.
Just a few.
but 4 years on one paper is a long time. So it's really wonderful for me to be able to talk about the finished product and what it means to me and what it means for our field, not just to me. Like there's individual personalized meaning in it for me, but I think there's meaning in it for our field in general as a whole community, because I'm seeing the needs of our clinicians and I want to help meet them. And that was when it wasn't within the scope of this study. It was not the solution finding, but I hope that it's the start of something, because we don't know how to solve the problems if we don't know what they are. And it's just a really beautiful thing. And I'm really excited to like talk about it. Like it's done, and holy crap, it's done. Like I'm still in like disbelief that I actually finished it.
Yeah. Good for you.
And it's really important to me. So I just appreciate this platform to talk about it. This is adding value to my life.
Totally. Bask in it.
Yeah.
And we appreciate that you have done it to
Yeah.
keep that momentum going, get it rolling for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite song or intervention to use in a session?
I really love. Well, there's always the response that like I'm basing it on client needs. So I don't really like, I'm not bringing something because I like it. I'm going to bring something because like it means it needs. So there's the disclaimer. But I'm really attracted to the Moyo drum right now. It's like the steel pan drum family that's like a dome shape, and it's like doom, 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 doom. It's really resonant. And I love pitched percussion in general. And that one's just very resonant. And when sometimes I'll play it and do like a chanting kind of thing with the group. Sometimes we'll do like a call and response thing, just kind of using like mindfulness and being still and being in the music and using our voice, and just so many wonderful things happening there. Or sometimes I'll pass it around the group. And I can't really do that too much right now because of COVID. I don't know, but passing things is not COVID friendly. But when COVID like is in a chill out phase and not ruining our lives, I like to pass around the Moyo drum and let people actually play it themselves and People like are very like kids, teenagers, adults, like so many people are responsive to the Moyo. So if you don't have one, get one. This is not a paid advertisement.
Nice. All right, last question is, where can the listeners find you and connect with you?
I am, you can email me at mwiseheart. It's MWISEHEART. Make sure there's an E in heart. Everybody leaves it out. I blame people with the last name Hart that spell it HART. It's all their fault.
Yes, definitely.
M Wiseheart with an E and H at wmcarey.edu. WMCAREY.edu. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, and I'm on TikTok, but I've never even made a video. So I literally only got on there because my sister posted a cute video of my niece one time, and I was like, oh, I've got to see this. So created an account, but I've never made a video because I'm really self-conscious and I feel stupid when I do it.
Social media is a weird place. Don't feel stupid.
It really is. I enjoy watching other people. I just don't know. Maybe I'll come around. I don't know.
You can also just be an observer.
I like being an observer on TikTok.
For sure. Well, I will link that stuff too, so people can keep up to date on all the awesome stuff you're doing. But I really
would love to be friends with anyone.
Yeah, I love that you came on the show and that you reached out and that you're doing this work. And I'm excited to see what else you uncover and how this positively impacts the trajectory of our profession. I think that this is really important stuff that will become mainstream is not the word, but like curriculum, like a standard curriculum will include this. Now that you have like that. Yeah, something standardized for people to look at. So thank you for doing all that work.
Thank you so much for appreciating it.
Truly do. Thank you so much for tuning in to this two-part conversation. I can't wait to see what literature Melanie puts together for this, or what format she chooses to use, because I think, just like I said in this episode, having this a little standardized, I don't have a better word for that right now, but to have, hey, like, this is reflective practice, this is what it's looking like, this is the counter implications and the benefits and blah blah blah, having all of that stuff to look at, like hard data to look at, I think is going to help us all so much in how we are utilizing reflective practice, how we're teaching it, and how it is going to help us continue to grow as a profession and as individuals. So I can't wait to see what this becomes and where it takes us. And I hope that you have learned a lot from this episode, maybe had some aha moments just like I did. And yeah, thank you again for supporting the Music Therapy Chronicles. I appreciate you so much. If you are interested in getting CMTEs for listening to the show and you want a discount on that, head on over to mtpodcastcollective.com. That's the Music Therapy Podcast Collective. That's where all of our pod courses live. And if you get on that newsletter, you can get a 10% discount on your first pod course purchase. So thank you again for tuning into this week's episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. I really hope you enjoyed this conversation and got a lot out of it. If you're looking for more Music Therapy Chronicles, you can check out our website, musictherapychronicles.com, for more episodes, blog posts, social media links, contact information, our self-care community, and our CMTE opportunities in the form of pod courses. Hop on our monthly newsletter if you haven't already, and follow us on social media for just staying up to date on what's going on behind the scenes. We are Music Therapy Chronicles on all of the platforms. Please take a moment to leave us a rating and review. They really help the podcast be more visible, so more people like you who are looking for this type of content can find it. Thank you again for taking the time to listen to this week's episode, and I'll see you in the next one.